An aging billionaire handed over 4 unlimited black cards to the 4 women in his life. The girlfriend bought diamonds, the ex-wife bought power, the daughter bought a private jet party. But what his devoted maid bought, it triggered a federal investigation and exposed the family's darkest, deadliest secret. Oliver Croft was a man who had everything yet trusted absolutely no one. At 68, he had built Croft Enterprises into a global juggernaut, ruthlessly acquiring commercial real estate across Manhattan, London, and Dubai. His net worth hovered around $12 billion. But behind the custom-tailored Brioni suits and the private helicopters, Oliver was a dying man. A rare aggressive neurological condition had begun to gnaw at his nervous system. His doctors at the Mayo Clinic had given him 14 months, perhaps less. He hadn't told his family. He hadn't told the press. But as he sat in the sprawling mahogany-lined study of his primary residence, a breathtaking 60-acre isolated estate in Aspen, Colorado, he knew the vultures were already circling. He could feel it in the air. He could see it in the way they looked at him. He needed to know who actually cared about Oliver the man and who was merely waiting for Oliver the ATM to expire. That evening, a blizzard was howling outside the bulletproof floor-to-ceiling windows, wrapping the estate in a claustrophobic blanket of white. Oliver had summoned the 4 most significant women in his life for a private dinner. First to arrive in the dining room was Chloe Vanderkamp. At 26, she was Oliver's current girlfriend, a former Instagram model whose ambition was only outmatched by her vanity. She wore a backless emerald silk gown that cost more than most people made in a year, and her eyes constantly darted to her phone, checking her social media metrics. Next was Victoria Belmont, Oliver's first wife, and current head of public relations for Croft Enterprises. Victoria was 52, carved from ice and corporate ambition. Their marriage had ended a decade ago, but their financial lives remained hopelessly entangled. She wore a sharp, charcoal Armani pantsuit, looking at Oliver not with affection, but with the calculating gaze of a chief financial officer evaluating a depreciating asset. Then came Harper Croft, his 24-year-old daughter. Harper had never worked a day in her life. She had been kicked out of 3 Ivy League universities and spent her days bouncing between rehab facilities in Malibu and VIP tables in Ibiza. She slouched into the dining chair, rolling her eyes reeking of expensive tequila and profound entitlement. And finally, standing quietly by the perimeter of the room, was Maya Washington. Maya was a black woman in her late 40s who had been Oliver's head housekeeper and confidant for 15 long years. She had seen Oliver at his highest and his lowest. She was the one who managed his complicated medication schedule when he started hiding his tremors from the world. She knew the secret passcodes to the safe. She knew which corporate rivals he despised, and she knew exactly how he liked his Earl Grey tea when the insomnia kept him awake until dawn. Maya was fiercely intelligent, carrying herself with a quiet dignity that often unsettled the other 3 women. Victoria and Chloe frequently tried to treat Maya like part of the furniture, underestimating her sharp mind, simply because she wore a uniform. Dinner was served in tense, suffocating silence. Once the plates were cleared, Oliver cleared his throat. The slight tremor in his right hand was noticeable, though only Maya seemed to truly register it. Her dark eyes flashing with a brief wave of concern. "I have gathered you all here tonight for a very specific reason." Oliver began, his voice raspy but commanding. He reached into the inner pocket of his blazer and placed a velvet box on the table. He opened it to reveal 4 sleek, heavy metal cards. They were J.P. Morgan Reserve cards, specifically minted for his private accounts. Each of these cards is linked directly to an offshore account in the Cayman Islands, Oliver explained, locking eyes with each woman. There is no limit. None. You could buy a fleet of cars, a skyscraper, or a small country, and the transaction would clear. Chloe let out a small, breathless gasp, her eyes widening. Harper sat up straight, suddenly entirely sober. Victoria simply narrowed her eyes, instantly suspicious. "What is the occasion, Oliver?" Victoria asked, her voice laced with skepticism. "You don't do anything without an angle. Call it an early inheritance, or an experiment," Oliver replied smoothly. "You have exactly 1 week, 7 days. Buy whatever your heart truly desires. Show me what matters most to you. There will be no judgment, no lectures, and no consequences. Consider it a gift of absolute freedom." He slid the cards across the polished oak table. One stopped in front of Chloe, one in front of Victoria, one in front of Harper. He picked up the final card, stood up slowly, and walked over to where Maya was standing. "Mr. Croft, I couldn't possibly—" Maya started taking a step back, her hands raised. "Maya," Oliver interrupted softly. "For 15 years you have kept this house, and frankly my life, from falling apart. You have never asked me for a single dime beyond your salary. Take it. The rules apply to you as well." Maya looked at the heavy black metal in his outstretched hand. She could feel the burning, resentful glares of Chloe, Victoria, and Harper boring into her back. The racial and class dynamics in the room were so thick you could cut them with a knife. To the other 3 women, Maya was the help. To Oliver, she was the only one who asked how he was feeling, and actually waited to hear the answer. Reluctantly, Maya took the card. "Thank you, Mr. Croft," she said quietly, sliding it into her apron pocket. "The clock starts at midnight," Oliver announced, turning back to the table. "I suggest you start dreaming." Later that night, as Oliver sat in his study, staring at the blazing fireplace, he opened a secured laptop. He had an encrypted dashboard directly connected to the 4 card numbers. He was going to watch every single penny they spent. The trap was set. By 9 a.m. the following morning, the dashboard on Oliver's encrypted laptop began to light up like a slot machine. The first alert belonged to Chloe. Oliver watched the screen as a charge for $240,000 cleared at a Ferrari dealership in Beverly Hills. 30 minutes later, another charge appeared, $185,000 at Cartier on Rodeo Drive. By noon, Chloe had booked a penthouse suite at the Beverly Wilshire for the next 3 months and spent nearly $500,000 on a private stylist diamond tennis bracelets and an assortment of Hermes Birkin bags. She was living out her ultimate influencer fantasy, buying the shiny hollow armor she believed validated her existence. Oliver sighed, crossing her name off a mental list. She was exactly who he thought she was: decorative, expensive, and entirely lacking in substance. The next day, Harper's card activated. Oliver wasn't surprised by the location, St. Bart's. Harper had chartered a Gulfstream G650 for her and 12 of her closest friends, people whose last names she probably didn't even know. The charges rolled in with sickening speed. $150,000 for a week-long yacht rental, $40,000 at a high-end champagne distributor, $85,000 in vague consulting fees to a local concierge service that Oliver knew from his own wilder days was a front for securing high-grade narcotics. Harper was trying to numb her daddy issues with endless noise and excess. She didn't want a future, she just wanted a distraction from the present. Then came Victoria. Her spending was entirely different and far more chilling. There were no diamonds, no yachts, no sports cars. Victoria was a shark, and sharks only cared about leverage. Oliver watched as her card executed massive wire transfers. $2.5 million into an offshore shell company, $4 million to quietly buy up the debt of one of Croft Enterprises' biggest competitors, effectively giving her a backdoor controlling interest. She spent $800,000 on a retainer for a ruthless team of corporate litigators. Victoria wasn't shopping for pleasure. She was fortifying her war chest. She was preparing for a hostile takeover the moment Oliver's health failed. She was buying the very weapons she intended to use against his estate. Oliver leaned back in his leather chair, a bitter smile playing on his lips. His girlfriend was a parasite. His daughter was a reckless addict. His ex-wife was a predator. But as the days ticked by, day 3, day 4, day 5, Oliver kept refreshing the dashboard for the 4th card. Maya's card remained completely inactive. The balance stayed firmly at 0. She went about her daily duties at the Aspen estate, as if nothing had changed. She dusted the library, oversaw the kitchen staff, and made sure Oliver took his experimental neurological medications precisely at 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. She didn't buy a new car. She didn't pay off her sister's mortgage back in Atlanta. She bought absolutely nothing. Oliver was deeply unsettled. Was she afraid? Was she trying to prove a point about her moral superiority? Or did she simply not know how to use the power he had handed her? On the morning of day 6, Oliver was in his study, sipping his morning espresso, when a high-priority alert flashed on his laptop screen. A massive transaction was attempting to clear on Maya's card. Oliver leaned forward, adjusting his reading glasses. Transaction amount $1,450,000. Merchant Kestrel Biogenetics Labs. Oliver frowned. Kestrel was an ultra-secretive, cutting-edge private medical research facility in Switzerland. They specialized in experimental gene therapies, mostly operating outside the strict regulations of the FDA. Why on earth would his housekeeper be sending $1.5 million to a Swiss medical lab? 10 minutes later, a second alert chimed. Transaction amount $850,000. Merchant the Vanguard Intelligence Group. Now Oliver's heart began to race. Vanguard was not a luxury brand. They were a notoriously aggressive private intelligence and corporate espionage firm, composed of ex-CIA operatives. They were the people you hired when you needed to find hidden money, blackmail a politician, or dig up deeply buried, dangerous secrets. A cold sweat broke out on Oliver's forehead. He minimized the banking window and pulled up the security camera feeds for the estate. He clicked through the feeds until he found Maya. She wasn't in the kitchen. She wasn't in the laundry room. The cameras showed her standing in the estate's underground server room. It was a restricted area, locked by a biometric scanner that only Oliver and apparently Maya had access to. On the screen, Maya was holding a small encrypted hard drive, plugging it directly into the estate's mainframe. She was moving with a fast, practiced efficiency that terrified him. His quiet, devoted housekeeper, the black woman who had smiled and served his family while they looked down on her, wasn't just cleaning his home. She was downloading 15 years of his darkest corporate secrets, and she was using his unlimited credit card to fund the operation to destroy him. Or so he thought. Oliver grabbed his cane, his hand trembling with a mixture of his illness and pure, unadulterated rage. He navigated the sprawling hallways, taking the private elevator down to the subterranean level. He expected a confrontation. He expected a betrayal of the highest order. When the elevator doors slid open, Maya was waiting for him. She didn't look surprised. In fact, she looked incredibly tired, holding a thick manila folder in her hands. "I knew the server alarm would bring you down here, Mr. Croft," Maya said, calmly, her voice echoing in the cold concrete hallway. "What are you doing, Maya?" Oliver demanded, gripping his cane tightly. "Swiss Biolabs, ex-CIA operatives. Are you selling me out to Victoria? Or is this your own long game?" Maya walked toward him, entirely unafraid. She held out the manila folder. I am saving your life. Oliver, she said, using his first name for the very first time in 15 years. And if you want to survive the end of the week, you need to look at what I just bought you. Oliver Croft took the manila folder from Maya's hands. His fingers, plagued by the familiar, infuriating tremor, fumbled slightly with the clasp. The subterranean server room was freezing the hum of the mainframes, providing a low mechanical soundtrack to the most pivotal moment of his life. He flipped the folder open. The first document was a comprehensive toxicological report bearing the crest of Kestrel Biogenetics Labs. It was densely packed with chemical breakdowns and medical jargon, but one word was circled in bright red ink thallium, 204. Next to it, a handwritten note read, "Lethal concentration, administered over an 8-month period." Oliver stared at the paper, his mind struggling to process the information. "Thallium," he whispered, his voice echoing off the concrete walls. "That's rat poison. A heavy metal. It's a highly refined synthetic isotope of thallium." Maya corrected her voice, steady and clinical. "Colorless, odorless, tasteless, and specifically designed to mimic the exact symptoms of a degenerative neurological disease. The tremors, the insomnia, the slow degradation of your motor functions. You aren't dying of a rare illness, Oliver. You are being murdered. Slowly, methodically, and right under your own roof." Oliver felt the oxygen leave the room. He leaned heavily on his cane, his knuckles turning white. "How I have a team of private chefs. My security is impenetrable, and my physician, Dr. Philip Cameron, runs blood panels on me every single week." Maya let out a dry, humorless chuckle. "That is exactly where the Vanguard intelligence group comes in. Turn to the 3rd page." Oliver flipped past the medical charts to a stack of financial documents. They were wire transfer receipts, decrypted by Vanguard's ex-CIA specialists. As a black woman working in a house full of ultra-wealthy elites, I learned a long time ago that I possess a superpower. Maya explained, pacing slowly in front of the server racks. "I am invisible. People do not see me as a threat. They do not see me as a witness. They see a uniform. For months I've been serving Dr. Cameron his coffee when he comes for your private checkups. I noticed his hands shook more than yours did. I noticed the encrypted messaging app he frantically checked when he thought he was alone in the drawing room. So I used your unlimited card to hire Vanguard to look into him." Oliver scanned the documents. His stomach dropped. There were monthly wire transfers of $250,000 originating from a shell corporation in the British Virgin Islands, funneling directly into a numbered offshore account held by Dr. Philip Cameron. "And who owns the shell corporation?" Oliver asked, though a sickening knot in his gut already knew the answer. "Your head of public relations, your ex-wife, Victoria," Maya said flatly. Oliver closed his eyes. The betrayal hit him like a physical blow, a suffocating weight on his chest. Victoria. She had grown impatient. Waiting for him to die of natural causes was too unpredictable for her corporate timeline. She needed his controlling shares of Croft Enterprises now, before he could potentially restructure his will or liquidate assets. "She has been paying Dr. Cameron to lace your evening medication with the thallium isotope," Maya continued. "He falsified your weekly blood panels to hide the heavy metal toxicity, diagnosing you with a phantom neurological condition to explain away the symptoms. It was a perfect crime. In a few months, your heart would have simply stopped. They would have ruled it natural causes resulting from your disease. Victoria would step in as the grieving ex-wife, seize the board of directors, and take everything. And the $1.45 million to Kestrel Labs?" Oliver asked, his voice shaking with a potent mixture of grief and rising volcanic anger. "The antidote," Maya replied. Thallium toxicity is notoriously difficult to reverse once it binds to the nervous system. Standard chelating agents wouldn't work fast enough. I had to secure a specialized, highly experimental Prussian blue derivative therapy. Kestrel is synthesizing it right now. A medical courier is flying it in from Switzerland via private jet as we speak. That money bought your cure, Oliver. You are going to live. Oliver looked at the woman standing before him. For 15 years he had paid her a salary to clean his floors, press his suits, and organize his schedule. In return, she had quietly observed the vipers surrounding him, gathered the evidence to expose them, and spent millions of his own dollars to save his life. "Why Maya?" Oliver asked, a tear finally escaping and tracing down his weathered cheek. "After the way my family has treated you. Victoria's condescension, Harper's disrespect, Chloe's outright disdain. Why didn't you just take the card, buy an island, and let me die?" Maya met his gaze, her dark eyes filled with a profound, unshakable dignity. "Because my mother raised me to value human life over paper money," she said softly. "And because despite the monsters you married and raised, you were the only person in this house who ever looked me in the eye and asked me how my day was. You showed me humanity. I am returning the favor." Oliver closed the folder. The tremors in his hands suddenly didn't feel like a death sentence anymore. They felt like a call to war. "The experiment ends tomorrow night," Oliver said, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy whisper. "Let them enjoy their final 24 hours of wealth. Because when the clock strikes midnight, I am going to burn their worlds to the ground." The 7th night arrived. The blizzard had passed, leaving the Aspen estate shrouded in a haunting, crystalline silence. The dining room was once again illuminated by the roaring fireplace and the soft glow of crystal chandeliers. Oliver sat at the head of the long oak table, dressed in a sharp, pitch-black tuxedo. He looked paler than usual, but his eyes were entirely clear, burning with a terrifying, predatory focus. Maya stood in her usual place by the perimeter, holding a silver tray, her expression an impenetrable mask. The women arrived to present their spoils. Chloe pranced into the room first, draped in a grotesque amount of Cartier diamonds, a vintage Rolex on her wrist, and a sable fur coat slung over her shoulders. "Oliver, darling, I secured the most amazing penthouse in Beverly Hills. It's a fantastic investment for us," she purred, taking her seat. Harper stumbled in next. She looked exhausted, her skin sallow beneath a heavy layer of designer makeup. She reeked of stale champagne and poor choices. "The yacht was legendary, Dad. Best week of my life. You really know how to throw a lifeline to a girl." Finally, Victoria glided into the room. She wore a tailored crimson dress that looked remarkably like a victory flag. She didn't flaunt jewelry or bags. She carried a sleek leather briefcase. "Well, Oliver," Victoria said, taking her seat to his right, placing the briefcase on the table. "I must say, this little financial exercise of yours was quite illuminating. I took the liberty of securing our corporate flanks. I've positioned Croft Enterprises to dominate the European markets." Oliver smiled. It was a terrifying, hollow thing. "I am so glad you all enjoyed yourselves." Oliver began, his voice echoing loudly in the cavernous room. "I told you to buy what your heart truly desired. And you did. Chloe, you bought vanity. Harper, you bought oblivion. And Victoria, you bought a hostile takeover." The smug smiles on Chloe and Harper's faces faltered. Victoria simply narrowed her eyes. "I bought security for this family, Oliver. Don't be dramatic." "Security," Oliver repeated softly. He reached under the table and pressed a hidden button. The heavy mahogany doors to the dining room violently swung open. A dozen federal agents in tactical gear flooded into the room, their boots echoing like thunder against the marble floors. They were led by Special Agent Mercer of the Federal Bureau of Investigation's White Collar and Corporate Crimes Division. Chloe screamed, dropping her crystal wine glass. It shattered, sending expensive red wine pooling across the floor like blood. Harper leapt out of her chair, her eyes wide with sudden drug-addled panic. "What is the meaning of this?" Victoria roared, standing up, her composed facade instantly shattering. "Oliver, call off your security." "They aren't my security, Victoria," Oliver said smoothly, remaining perfectly still in his chair. "Agent Mercer, do you have the warrants?" Agent Mercer stepped forward, producing a thick stack of legal documents. "Victoria Belmont, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder wire fraud and corporate espionage. Dr. Philip Cameron is already in federal custody in New York. He turned state's evidence against you 20 minutes ago." All the color drained from Victoria's face. She looked like a ghost. Her eyes darted wildly around the room, landing on Oliver. "You're insane. You're dying, Oliver. The dementia is making you paranoid." Oliver stood up. He didn't use his cane. Thanks to the first round of the Kestrel antidote administered by Maya that morning, his legs felt stronger than they had in months. He walked slowly around the table, stopping inches from his ex-wife. "I'm not dying of dementia, Victoria. I was dying of thallium poisoning, bought and paid for by you." Oliver snapped his fingers. Maya stepped forward from the shadows, placing the thick Manila Vanguard intelligence file on the table right in front of Victoria. "You never paid attention to the help, Victoria," Oliver whispered coldly. "That was your fatal mistake. Maya saw everything, and she used the unlimited black card I gave her to hire ex-CIA operatives to trace your offshore accounts. She bought the antidote to the poison you paid Dr. Cameron to feed me." Victoria looked at Maya. For the first time in 15 years, Victoria actually saw the black housekeeper. She didn't see a maid. She saw the architect of her absolute destruction. "You!" Victoria hissed, lunging across the table toward Maya. Two federal agents grabbed Victoria by the arms, slamming her back and locking heavy steel handcuffs around her wrists. "Get her out of my sight," Oliver commanded. As Victoria was dragged kicking and screaming from the dining room, her curses echoing down the hallway, Oliver turned his attention to his girlfriend and his daughter. Chloe was sobbing hysterically, clutching her diamonds as if they could shield her. Harper was frozen in shock. "Chloe," Oliver said, his tone dripping with disgust, "you have exactly 10 minutes to pack whatever fits in a single suitcase. Leave the jewelry, leave the bags. They belong to the estate. The security team will escort you to the airport. We are done." Chloe opened her mouth to argue, saw the federal agents still standing by the doors, and sprinted out of the room in a panic. Oliver turned to Harper. The disappointment in his eyes was heavier than any physical blow. "Harper, you are my blood. But you are a parasite. As of tomorrow morning, you are entirely cut off. No trust fund, no credit cards, no safety net. You will check into a state-run rehabilitation facility for 6 months. If you complete the program, I will pay for your college tuition to learn a trade. If you fail, you will never see a single dime of my money again." Harper burst into tears, nodding frantically. She knew he meant every single word. Within an hour, the Aspen estate was empty. The sirens had faded into the snowy night. The parasites had been purged. Oliver sat in his study, staring into the roaring fire. The heavy metal black cards were stacked neatly on his desk. 3 of them had racked up millions in frivolous, selfish debt. The door creaked open, and Maya walked in, carrying a fresh tray with a steaming mug of Earl Grey tea. She placed it gently on the desk next to the black cards. "The authorities have seized Victoria's assets," Maya reported quietly. "Dr. Cameron has confessed to everything. The crisis is over, Mr. Croft." Oliver looked up at her. He reached out and pushed the stack of unlimited credit cards toward her. "My name is Oliver Meyer. You earned the right to use it," he said softly. "And I don't want you working as my housekeeper anymore." Meyer's breath hitched slightly. "Sir, I want you to sit on the board of directors for Croft Enterprises." Oliver stated his tone, brooking no argument. "I am establishing a philanthropic foundation with an initial endowment of $2 billion. It will focus on funding experimental medical research and providing scholarships for underprivileged minority students. I want you to run it as the CEO. You are the only person on this earth I trust with my legacy." Meyer looked at the black cards, then up at Oliver. A slow, genuine smile finally spread across her face. "I accept, Oliver," she said, her voice filled with a quiet, undeniable power. "But I still expect my tea to be served exactly at 8. The billionaire who had everything finally realized that the most valuable asset he possessed wasn't in an offshore bank account. It was the loyalty of the woman who had been standing in his shadow all along. Did Meyer make the right choice by saving the billionaire who ignored her for 15 years? Or should she have taken the money and run? Tell us what you would have done in the comments below. If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, smash that like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more mind-blowing dramatic stories every single week.